The Last Stop in Yuma County is from a first-time director in Francis Galluppi, but when you watch it, you would think that you're watching a film from a director with 10 plus projects already under their belt.
Sorry, but our gas pumps are dry. I'm waiting on the fuel truck to show up.
Estimated $700,000. A witness spotted a green Pinto with a damaged rear end fleeing the bank at approximately 6:20 a.m. this morning.
So as mentioned, The Last Stop in Yuma County comes from first-time feature filmmaker Francis Galluppi. Francis is a former musician playing drums in a punk band. He's made a number of short films, mostly with friends using locations that they have access to, but this is kind of his breakthrough. And not just kind of, it is his breakthrough because as a result of this film, he has been given the opportunity to direct the next film in the Evil Dead franchise. A very, very significant jump for Galluppi, but I'm confident that he can handle it. This particular film, The Last Stop in Yuma County, is a fairly simple single location movie set at the Four Aces, a fairly common filming location used in projects like Palm Springs, for example, but it is perfect for the tone, for the mood that is being set. Essentially, we follow our protagonist, or at least our central character, played by Jim Cummings, who is an indie director in his own right. We follow him as he plays a knife salesman, a seemingly unassuming knife salesman, going to this gas station to fill up. The gas station is out of fuel, so he has to sit in a diner to wait for a fuel truck to arrive. Of course, more people begin filling in to the diner, faced with the exact same situation, and most of the tension arises upon the arrival of two men who have successfully, so far at least, gotten away with a robbery. Of course, they are trying to get away, literally and metaphorically, but they are also trapped in this diner. Our cast of characters continues to grow, tension rises, and, well, stuff goes down. The film itself went through a process, shall we say, when it comes to pre-production. It was originally optioned, the script was originally optioned to a fairly significant production studio who made many promises about landing A-list stars, about a significant budget, some tools, some toys to play with from Galluppi's perspective. But this ultimately fell through, and actually it was a friend of Galluppi's, the owner of a local clothing brand, Local Boogeyman, who stepped up, sold his house in order to help finance this project, about as indie as you can get. I had the pleasure of chatting with Francis, and he explained a little bit more about this process.
I ended up optioning the script to a company that sort of promised they were going to do it for like, $5 million. And then it was just a real shit show. It was like, we needed a big name in there, and none of these names were saying yes to a first-time director. And also just like creatively was not fitting what I wanted this movie to be. It was like, fuck it, I'm going to do this myself. And I started just making the movie. At that point, my DP and I, like, we did so much prep. Like, we had everything shot listed, and we used shot designer, and we were going out to the location. We photo boarded everything. Like, I just started writing letters to these actors that I always wanted to work with, and got really, really lucky. And then, yeah, I was ready to go. I was like, this fucking I'm ready to go. Just tell me when, and then, yeah, what ended up happening was James sold his house to finance it. So it was a truly independent process. I mean, there was literally like, we were so outside of the quote unquote like Hollywood system making this movie. And
of course, with a smaller budget, there were not these crazy toys that Galluppi could use, and he instead relied on simple locked off tripod shots, on slow but significant dolly pushes, and it fit so perfectly with the real fabric of the film. This is a project that needed to be slow. This is a project that is ultimately better as a result of its lower budget. Galluppi isn't afraid to have the audience sit with these characters. And that's what we need to do to really feel their tension and to empathize with their situation. They are stuck in this diner. They are confined, they are constricted, and the choices when it comes to, as I mentioned, the use of locked off shots or slow dolly push ins kind of mirror that confinement. Galluppi worked hand in hand with his DP, his cinematographer, Mac Fiskin, having many phone calls over Zoom, going through every last detail of every shot. There is not a shot here that feels out of place. And I find that that is not very common for first-time filmmakers. We often see shots that are put in just to have a cool shot or to show off without really contributing to the overall messaging or tone or thematic exploration of the film itself. Here, though, everything works, and that includes what on the surface might seem like a random slow motion sequence, but within the context of the film and seeing how it was executed, it again works. Galluppi was one of the few people who believed that this sequence would work. In fact, he met some pretty significant opposition, but it ultimately made its way into the film. Here he is talking about that a little bit.
It's a weird thing to read, right? When it's just like break into
Mm-hmm.
slow motion. All these needle drops are written into the script. Puts on a record, Roy Orbison crying, break into slow motion, and like you know, it's every like line of action of what each character is doing. And everybody was like, what the fuck are you doing? You're putting a music video in the middle of your movie. Like tonally, this is so wrong. And like, I really had to stick to my guns. I shot that scene a bunch in my living room with my wife, like just shooting on like, 120 frames on my iPhone and like figuring it out in Premiere, cutting it. Okay, I think I'm missing an overrun Charlotte here, blah, blah, blah. And
Wow.
then when we were pre-lighting, I was like, let's just do this scene real quick, like in the diner in the location. So I shot it on my phone, cut it that night. And so I think once I had that like rough version of it, I was like this is what I'm talking about. And I showed them and I had the Roy Orbison song on there. And I think people started to get it, but it was weird. It was a fucking weird thing to put in the movie, but I I had to stick to my guns.
Of course, this planning and this meticulous kind of shot list, thinking through all of the visual details is important to the success of this film, but it is also relying heavily on the performances. We have leading the charge Jim Cummings, who's great, but there's not really any bad performances here. We have the legendary Richard Brake playing one of the lead criminals. We have Jocelin Donahue really being asked to do a lot here, playing the worker in the restaurant. And she has to express so much emotion, so much turmoil without being able to say a lot due to the confines of the situation. I asked Galluppi about her performance and about working with these actors, and he had a lot of interesting things to say.
I did this with all the actors where I would jump on Zooms. Fortunately, like with Jocelyn, she lives pretty close to me, so we were doing this in person. But like we would meet up and comb through the script, and like any dialogue that felt contrived, I would rewrite it. Sometimes Jocelyn would pull me aside and be like, I think blah blah blah, and I'd be like, "You're spot on." It's funny because I think like some actors, they're like, "Did you catch that?" Like in my eyes, I was like telling, and like sometimes you don't. With Jocelyn, it's like she always was able to convey that through her expressions like so perfectly.
Before even starting the shoot, he actually reached out to each actor individually. He didn't have a huge kind of casting call. He had people in mind who were working in this indie space that he saw filling these roles. He spoke to them individually. He even sent them letters, and thankfully they were on board. These performances were dramatic. They built tension, but some of them were also just hilarious. And this is a difficult ask for a director to toe that line. Some of these lines, while written on paper, might seem kind of as one offs that don't fit with the flow or the mood of the scene, but when they're executed as they work perfectly. I watched this film by myself on my couch with an early screener, but I was still laughing out loud, which is difficult to do when you're not watching with a crowd. Again, I asked Galluppi about how he was able to strike this balance between drama and comedy.
Nick Logan and Connor Paolo, Travis, and the deputy Gavin, they were just so fucking funny that like I kind of let them just run with it. I mean, they took some big swings and I was all for it. But like with Jim, I wanted to tone Jim's performance down as much as I could because like he had to, right? Like this is like in my eyes, this is a film noir and like this is the everyman getting corrupt and continues to make terrible decisions. So like I couldn't have him be like this over the top quirky character, right? Like he had to stay grounded, but Charlotte like always had to stay grounded. Um, but I think it was just like picking and choosing which of these characters are going to be absurd and over the top and which ones are going to bring us back to reality.
At the end of the day, yes, this is a film from a first time feature director, but this is not a first time feature. This is a polished movie. This is a piece, a project from someone who is already self assured, from someone who believes in himself, and from someone who has put in the work. This is not just going up to bat and winging it. This is tedious, this is thoughtful, and this is executed the way that it was meant to be executed. Of course, being at the helm of the next Evil Dead film will bring a lot of opportunities for Galluppi, but it will also bring some challenges. As we discussed, having a larger budget isn't always better. In this film, The Last Stop in Yuma County, it ultimately was a benefit to have to make choices and to be very intentional about every shot. I'm hopeful and confident that even with a larger budget, that same kind of feel will remain, and I know that I can't wait to watch this next Evil Dead film when it comes out in some time. The Last Stop in Yuma County is currently out in theaters on a limited release, but it can actually be rented online already, so give it a watch. If you did make it through this whole video, appreciated. Do the like thing, the comment thing, the subscribe thing, all that stuff I am told is helpful. So, I don't know, do it. Cheers.